Leave now or they'll find you. Annie's voice trembled. If you don't leave right now, she added quickly, her small chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. They're going to find a way to keep you inside. They said they already planned it. They won't let you walk out. William Carter's hand remained on the door handle. Who are you? He asked, his tone firm but not harsh. And why are you saying this to me? What plan? And how would you even know something like that? Annie swallowed, but she held her ground. My name is Annie, she said. My dad works here. He fixes things, the doors, the air, the cameras. William's eyes narrowed slightly. Maintenance. It explained her presence. It did not explain her certainty. I wasn't supposed to hear it. Annie continued, her voice quieter now, but steady. They were in the room near the panels. The door wasn't closed all the way. William checked his watch. Dokuz, Ikipem. Inside, people were waiting. Schedules had been aligned days in advance. Deals like this didn't tolerate delay, not even for uncertainty. I have a meeting in that room, he said calmly, still facing the glass. A very important one. You shouldn't be up here, he said, turning back toward the door. And whatever you think you heard, I heard them say 5 minutes. That made him pause. Not fully. Just enough. They said once you walk in. Annie pressed on, taking a small step closer. They're going to lock everything. No cameras. No one sees anything. William exhaled slowly. I appreciate your concern, he said, his voice softening just enough to acknowledge her without agreeing with her. But I can't postpone a meeting because of something you might have misheard. He reached for the handle again. That was when Annie moved. It wasn't fast, not in the way adults moved, but it was immediate, instinctive. She stepped in front of the door and placed both hands flat against it, her small body forming a barrier that made no sense physically, and yet stopped him completely. Please don't go in, she said. Just wait, she added, looking up at him. 10 minutes, that's all. If I'm wrong, you can go in. I won't stop you again. William blinked, caught off guard not by her strength, but by her reasoning. 10 minutes. It sounded so small. I don't delay meetings, he said. Annie didn't move. They said 5 minutes, she replied softly. So if you wait 10, you'll know. The logic settled between them. William studied her more closely now. Behind the glass door, the conference room lights glowed steady and warm. Everything looked normal. Prepared. Safe. Exactly as it should. Exactly as it always did. Before something went wrong. William's phone vibrated in his pocket. Then it rang. He hesitated for a fraction of a second before pulling it out. The screen lit up with a familiar name. His assistant. He answered, Mr. Carter. His secretary's voice came through, polite, composed, but carrying a subtle urgency. Everyone is ready for you. They're asking if you'll be joining now. William glanced at the door, then at Annie. Her hands were still pressed against the glass, small fingers spread wide, as if she could physically hold back whatever waited on the other side. I'll be there in a moment, he said. A pause. Of course, sir, the voice replied. They're expecting you. The call ended. William lowered the phone slowly. This was the moment. Routine, or hesitation, control, or doubt. He looked at Annie again. 10 minutes, she said quietly, as if reminding him of something he had already agreed to, even though he hadn't. 10 minutes, he said under his breath, almost as if testing the idea again. Then, a soft sound broke the silence, the faint click of a latch. William's head turned instantly. The conference room door. It opened just slightly. Not enough to reveal the entire room, just a narrow gap, carefully controlled. Annie reacted before he did. She grabbed his sleeve, small fingers tightening urgently, and pulled. Come here, she whispered. There was no panic in her voice, only urgency. William allowed himself to be moved. 2 quick steps. They pressed into the shadow of a recessed corner just down the hallway, partially hidden by the angle of the wall and a structural column that broke the line of sight from the conference room. William stilled his breathing instinctively. The door opened a little wider. A man stepped out, mid-30s. Clean suit. Earpiece still in place. The kind of assistant who didn't stand out but noticed everything. Not William's assistant, someone else's. The man glanced down the hallway briefly, his expression tight, not nervous, but irritated. Then he pulled out his phone. William didn't move. Annie stood, pressed lightly against his side, completely still now. The call connected. "Yeah," the man said quietly, turning slightly away from the door. "He's not here yet. I know what the timeline is," he continued, his voice low but edged now. "But if he doesn't walk in, we can't trigger anything." William felt something cold settle in his chest. The man paced a step, lowering his voice even further. "No, listen to me," he said. "The system's already prepped. Air control is set. Doors will seal automatically once the sequence starts." William's gaze sharpened. Air control. Doors. Exactly what Annie had said. The man ran a hand through his hair, frustration creeping into his tone. "But it only works if he's inside," he added. "That's the whole point. 5 minutes after entry lockdown, no camera feed, no external access. Clean and contained." Annie's fingers tightened slightly against William's sleeve. William didn't look at her. He didn't need to. Everything she had said was unfolding in real time. On the other end of the call, the voice must have pushed back. The man exhaled sharply. "Yes, I understand what's at stake," he said. "But him being late changes things. If he suspects anything..." He stopped, listened, then nodded once, though no one could see him. "Fine," he said quietly. "We hold position, but not for long." Another pause. "And if he walks away..." The voice on the other end must have asked. The man's expression hardened. "Then we adapt," he replied. "But the window closes fast." He ended the call. For a moment, he stood there in silence, thinking. Then he turned back toward the conference room and slipped inside. The door closed softly behind him. The hallway fell silent again. But this time, the silence felt different, heavier, no longer empty. Now it was filled with knowledge. William didn't move for several seconds. Beside him, Annie slowly loosened her grip on his sleeve. "I told you," she whispered, not with pride, but with quiet certainty. William finally turned to look at her. For the first time since she had spoken to him, there was no resistance in his expression, no doubt, only recognition. "You did," he said. His voice was lower now, steadier in a different way. Not the confidence of control, but the clarity of truth. He straightened slightly, glancing once more toward the closed conference room door. Just minutes ago, he would have walked straight into it. No hesitation, no question. Now, he saw it for what it was. Not a meeting, a trap. If this moment gave you chills and made you think about how close the truth can hide in plain sight, take a second to like this video, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more stories where justice finds its way back into the light. William exhaled slowly, the weight of that realization settling fully into place. They were going to seal the room, he said quietly. Control the air, shut down the cameras. Annie nodded. And no one would know, she added. William's jaw tightened. He looked down the hallway, then back toward the maintenance corridor Annie had mentioned earlier. The pieces were aligning now. System access, timing, internal knowledge. This wasn't random. It was someone who understood his building and his schedule. William glanced down at Annie again. You shouldn't be here, he said softly, but there was no dismissal in it now, only concern. Annie shook her head slightly. If I wasn't, she said, you would have gone inside. William didn't answer, because she was right. He looked once more at the closed door. Then, slowly, he stepped away from the wall, not toward the conference room, but away from it. The decision was no longer difficult. Behind him, Annie followed without needing to be told. And as they moved down the hallway together, William Carter understood something with absolute certainty. He hadn't just avoided a mistake. He had just walked away from a plan designed to end his life. And if that plan existed, then the people behind it were still here. William didn't stop walking until they reached the end of the corridor. Only then did he slow. The distance wasn't far, just enough to put walls and angles between them and the conference room, but it felt like crossing an invisible boundary. Behind them lay something calculated, controlled, and quietly lethal. Ahead, uncertainty. He turned slightly, scanning the hallway. Still empty, still silent, but now he understood that silence differently. It wasn't absence, it was design. They're still inside, Annie said softly. William nodded once. Yes, he replied. And they're waiting for him. The realization didn't come with panic. It came with precision. Every word he had overheard replayed in his mind, not emotionally, but structurally. Timing, systems, dependencies. 5 minutes after entry. Lockdown, air control, no cameras. A system he had trusted, turned into a weapon. William exhaled slowly, then crouched slightly so he was closer to Annie's height. Not towering, not distant. "Annie," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I need you to tell me everything you remember, no matter how small." She nodded immediately. "The room was open a little," she began. "I was sitting on the floor, drawing. I heard them talking." "How many?" William asked. "Two," she said. "One was talking more. The other didn't say much." William's mind moved quickly. 2 people inside the control room, one likely executing, one supervising. "What did the quieter one do?" he asked. Annie frowned slightly, thinking. "He didn't move much," she said. "But when he talked, the other one listened." William's eyes narrowed. Authority, not volume. "Did you see him?" William asked. Annie hesitated. "Just a little," she said. "When they came out, he was taller and older, I think." William felt something shift again. Older, taller, quiet authority. There weren't many people in his circle who fit that description and had access to both his schedule and his systems. His jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained even. "Did you hear a name?" he asked. Annie shook her head. "No, but they talked like they knew you." That, more than anything, settled the last piece into place. This wasn't external. It was internal, carefully placed, carefully timed. William straightened again, his gaze drifting down the hallway toward the maintenance sector Annie had mentioned earlier. "Stay close," he said. They moved again, this time not cautiously, but deliberately. The building around them felt different now. The polished surfaces, the quiet lighting, the controlled climate. All of it still functioned perfectly, but it no longer felt like control. It felt like concealment. They reached the maintenance door Annie had pointed out before. Still slightly open, William pushed it gently. Inside, the hum of machinery greeted them again, low, steady, almost comforting in another context. Now it sounded like something breathing, alive, waiting. William stepped inside, Annie just behind him. The open panel was still there, unchanged. But now, with context, it told a different story. William approached it more closely this time. Carefully, he leaned in, studying the configuration, not touching, not interfering, just observing. He had spent years overseeing systems like this, approving budgets, reviewing reports, trusting specialists. He had never needed to understand every detail. Now, he wished he had. Still, he knew enough. The adjustment wasn't random. It was intentional, subtle, temporary, a configuration that would only activate under specific conditions. Entry, presence, time, 5 minutes. William's expression hardened. "They didn't break anything," he murmured. "They changed behavior." Annie looked up at him. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," William said quietly, "everything would look normal until it wasn't." He straightened again, stepping back from the panel. A sudden realization struck him, not as a thought, but as a question. "Your father," he said, looking down at Annie. "Where is he?" Annie blinked. "I don't know," she admitted. "He was here earlier. Then he went to fix something downstairs." William's mind shifted instantly. If Marcus was responsible for these systems and someone had accessed them, then either Marcus had been pulled away or deliberately kept away. "Did he say where he was going?" William asked. Annie shook her head. "He just said to wait," she replied. "Like always." William nodded slowly. Routine, predictable, exploitable. He glanced once more at the panel, then back toward the hallway. "They needed him out of the way," William said quietly. Annie didn't respond, but her silence felt like understanding. A faint vibration broke the moment. William's phone. He pulled it out. Another call. Same contact. His assistant. He stared at the screen for a second before answering. "Yes, Mr. Carter." Her voice came through, still composed but tighter now. "They're asking again. Should I tell them you're joining, or—" "No," William said. The word was calm, final, a pause on the other end. "Understood," she replied. "Would you like me to reschedule?" William glanced at Annie, then at the open panel, then toward the hallway that led back to the trap waiting for him. "No," he said again. "Do not reschedule. Keep them there." A longer pause this time. "Yes, sir," she said carefully. The call ended. Annie tilted her head slightly. "Why keep them there?" she asked. William slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Because," he said, his voice quiet but precise. "If they're waiting, they don't know I know." Annie's eyes widened, just a little. William turned toward the door. "And right now," he added, "that's the only advantage we have." They stepped back into the hallway. The air felt different again, not heavier, not lighter, sharper, focused. William Carter had spent his life building control. Tonight, for the first time, he understood something deeper. Control wasn't about having power. It was about knowing the truth before anyone else did. And thanks to a 6-year-old girl who refused to stay quiet, he did. He looked down at Annie. "Stay with me," he said. She nodded, and together, they walked back toward the center of the building, not as targets, but as the only two people who could still change what was about to happen. William slowed as they stepped back into the main corridor. He didn't stop completely, but his pace changed, measured now with intention. Every movement carried weight. Every sound, no matter how faint, registered. Behind them, the maintenance room door remained slightly open. Ahead, the conference room waited, unchanged, unaware. "They think you're coming," Annie said quietly. William nodded. "Yes," he replied. "And that's what makes this dangerous." He glanced toward the ceiling. The lights glowed steadily soft, warm, controlled. The kind of lighting designed to create comfort, to reassure, but now he saw it differently, not as comfort, as cover. "Annie," he said, lowering his voice. "We can't walk back there the same way." She looked up at him. "Why?" she asked. "Because if anyone sees us now," William said, "they'll know something changed." Annie thought for a moment. "Then we don't let them see us," she said simply. William almost smiled, not because it was clever, because it was true. He turned his head, scanning the structure of the floor, the intersections of hallways, the angles of glass partitions, the positioning of support columns. For years, he had moved through this space without needing to notice it. Now he studied it like a map. "There's a secondary corridor," he said, more to himself than to her. "Service access. Runs parallel to the main hall." Annie pointed immediately. "Back there," she said, "near the elevators." William followed her gesture. Of course, the same system that allowed maintenance to move unseen would allow them to do the same. "Stay close," he said. They moved again, this time not toward the center of the building, but along its edge, where design gave way to function. The lighting shifted subtly as they entered the secondary corridor, cooler, less polished, less concerned with appearance. This was where the building revealed itself. Pipes behind panels, access points behind plain doors, the reality behind the illusion. Their footsteps were quieter here, more contained. William stopped at the corner where the service corridor intersected with a narrow viewing gap, a section of glass that looked into the main hallway from an angle. From here, they could see the conference room door, still closed, still waiting, but now, they were watching it, not the other way around. William leaned slightly, careful to remain out of sight. "Anyone comes out," he said softly. "We see them first." Annie nodded, standing just behind him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Time passed differently now, not in minutes, in awareness. Every second stretched, sharpened by anticipation. William checked his watch. Doku's. On. PM. 5 minutes past the original window. If the plan had depended on his entry, then it had already failed, which meant, "They'll change something," he murmured. Annie looked up. "What do you mean?" "They won't wait forever," William said. "Plans like this don't stop. They adapt." As if summoned by the thought, the conference room door opened again. William stilled instantly. A different man stepped out this time. Older, taller, composed in a way that didn't need attention. He didn't rush, didn't look around nervously. He simply stepped into the hallway and stood there for a moment, as if considering something. Annie leaned closer, barely breathing. "That's him," she whispered. "The quiet one." William's eyes fixed on the man, and in that instant, recognition settled in, not from the face alone, from the presence, from the way the man stood, From the absence of hesitation, a man who expected the world to move according to his decisions. William's jaw tightened. He knew him, not as an employee, not as an outsider. As a partner, someone who had sat across from him in meetings, someone who had shaken his hand, someone who understood every system in this building, because William had trusted him with it. The man took out his phone, dialed, waited, then spoke. William couldn't hear every word from this distance, but he didn't need to. "No," the man said calmly. "He hasn't come in." A pause. "He will," he continued. "He always does." Another pause. Then, "No, we proceed as planned." William felt something cold settle into place. Proceed, even without him. The man turned slightly, his voice lowering. "Adjust the timing," he said. "We don't need 5 minutes if we control the flow earlier." Annie's grip tightened slightly on William's sleeve. William didn't move. "Make sure the system is ready," the man added. "No mistakes this time." He ended the call, stood still for a moment, then walked back into the conference room. The door closed behind him. Silence returned, but everything had changed. Annie looked up at William. "They're still going to do it," she whispered. William nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "Just differently." He stepped back from the glass. His mind was already moving faster now, sharper, more focused than it had been all night. This was no longer about avoiding the trap. It was about understanding it. "They adjusted the timing," he said, "which means the system can activate without me inside. Or they'll create a reason to bring me in." Annie frowned. "But you're not going," she said. William looked down at her. "No," he replied. "I'm not." A pause. Then, "But someone else might." Annie's eyes widened. "My dad?" The question landed heavily. William didn't answer immediately, because it was possible. Too possible. If Marcus returned, if he was asked to check something, if he stepped into that room without knowing, the plan wouldn't fail. It would just change its target. William turned toward the corridor leading deeper into the building. "We need to find him," he said. Annie nodded instantly. Without hesitation, without fear, just certainty. They began moving again, faster now, but still controlled. Every step carried urgency, not panic, purpose. As they disappeared into the service corridor, the conference room remained behind them, sealed, waiting, still holding a plan that had not been stopped, only delayed. And somewhere within the building, a man who had built everything on control realized something with absolute clarity. The most dangerous threat was never the system. It was the person who knew exactly how to use it. William didn't slow down. The moment Annie said it, "My dad," the situation stopped being strategic and became immediate. The plan was no longer contained inside a room. It had already begun to move, and if it moved, it could reach anyone. "We don't have much time," William said, his voice low but sharpened with urgency. "If they're adjusting the plan, they'll use whatever or whoever is closest to the system." Annie kept pace beside him, her small steps quick but steady. "My dad always checks things when something changes," she said. "If something's wrong, they'll call him." William nodded once. "That's exactly what I'm concerned about." They moved deeper into the service corridor, where the building's polished identity faded completely. Here, the walls were unfinished, lined with access panels, electrical conduits, and maintenance signage most people would never notice. The hum of machinery grew louder, alive, present, controlling everything. William glanced at each junction as they passed, scanning for movement, listening for anything out of place. "Where would he go first?" he asked. Annie didn't hesitate. "The control hub," she said. "Downstairs. That's where the main system is." William adjusted his direction immediately. "Then that's where we go." They reached a stairwell door unmarked, heavy, used only by staff who understood the building beyond its surface. William pushed it open. The air inside was cooler, carrying a faint metallic scent. "Careful," he said quietly. They began descending. Each step echoed softly, contained within the concrete shaft. The sound of their movement felt amplified, not loud, but unavoidable. Halfway down, William stopped. Annie looked up at him. "What is it?" she whispered. William held up a hand, listened. Footsteps. Below. Someone was coming up. William's expression shifted instantly, calculation replacing momentum. He moved Annie gently but quickly toward the side of the stairwell, pressing them both into the shadow just beyond the turn of the landing. "Stay still," he murmured. Annie nodded. The footsteps grew louder, measured, not rushed. A man appeared on the next flight up. Maintenance uniform, tool belt. William's eyes narrowed. Marcus, Annie's father. Annie's body tensed beside him, but she didn't speak. She didn't move. Marcus climbed steadily, unaware of them, his focus directed upward toward the floor they had just left. William's mind moved fast. If Marcus was heading up, then someone had already called him, right into the path of the plan. William stepped out just enough. Marcus. The name was quiet but firm. Marcus stopped instantly, turned. His eyes widened when he saw who was standing there. "Mr. Carter?" he said, surprised. "What are you?" His voice cut off as Annie stepped forward. "Dad." Everything in Marcus changed in that moment. Confusion, concern, instinct. "Annie? What are you doing down here?" he asked, moving toward her. "You're supposed to be waiting. We need to talk," William said. Marcus looked between them, then back at William. Something in William's expression made him stop asking questions. "What's going on?" Marcus asked, quieter now. William didn't answer immediately. He glanced up the stairwell, then back down, then at Marcus. "Who called you?" he asked. Marcus frowned. "Operations," he said. "Said there was a system irregularity on the executive floor. Air control wasn't responding the way it should." William's jaw tightened, exactly as expected. "And they asked you to check it personally," William said. Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah." Said it was urgent. Annie looked up at her father. "Don't go up there," she said softly. Marcus blinked. "What?" "They changed something," Annie said. "In the system. I saw it. I heard them." Marcus looked confused now, but not dismissive. "What are you talking about?" he asked. William stepped forward. "The system has been tampered with," he said, his voice calm but precise. "Deliberately. And whoever did it is expecting you to walk into it." Marcus stared at him. For a moment, disbelief flickered across his face, but only for a moment, because men like Marcus didn't trust words. They trusted patterns, and something about this pattern didn't feel right. "What kind of tampering?" he asked. William met his gaze directly. "The kind that doesn't break anything," he said. "The kind that waits." Marcus's expression shifted. That meant something to him. William could see it. "You saw it?" Marcus asked. "Yes," William replied. "Panel access. Adjusted behavior settings. Not visible unless you're looking for it." Marcus exhaled slowly. "That's not standard," he muttered. "No," William said. "It's not." Silence settled between them. "Then, why?" Marcus asked. William held his gaze. "Because it was designed for me," he said. Marcus froze, not in fear, in understanding. "And now," William continued, "if I don't walk into it, they'll need another way to trigger the system." Marcus looked down the stairwell, then back up, then at Annie. Realization hit. "They'll use me," he said quietly. William didn't soften the truth. "Yes." Annie reached for her father's hand. Marcus looked down at her. The weight of it all settled into place not as panic, but as responsibility. "Okay," he said after a moment. "Then we don't do what they expect." William nodded. "Exactly." Marcus straightened slightly, his posture changing not as an employee now, but as a man who understood the system better than anyone else in the building. "If they altered behavior settings," Marcus said, thinking aloud, "then they're relying on automated triggers." "They are," William confirmed. Marcus's eyes sharpened. "Then we can interrupt it." William's expression shifted just slightly. "Interest. How?" he asked. Marcus took a breath. "The system's centralized," he said. "Everything routes through the main control hub. If I override it there, whatever they set up won't activate." Annie looked between them. "Then let's go," she said. Marcus glanced down at her, then back at William. A silent agreement passed between them. Not spoken. Understood. William gestured down the stairs. "Lead the way." Marcus turned. They began descending together, faster now, but controlled, each step carrying them closer not just to answers, but to confrontation, because whatever had been planned upstairs had not ended. It had only shifted, and now, for the first time, the people it was meant to control were moving ahead of it. The stairwell opened into a lower level that felt nothing like the polished floors above. The air was cooler here, heavier with the scent of metal and machinery. The lighting was harsher, functional, unforgiving. No glass walls, no soft reflections. Just concrete, steel, and the quiet pulse of systems that kept the entire building alive. Marcus didn't slow as he pushed through the final door. "This way," he said, already moving. William followed close behind, Annie between them now, her small hand firmly in her father's. She didn't ask questions. She didn't hesitate. She understood enough. The hallway stretched long and narrow, lined with locked panels and control access points. Each door marked with codes and warnings most people upstairs would never notice or care about. But tonight, this was where everything mattered. "Control hub is at the end," Marcus said. "Main override station." William nodded, scanning the corridor as they moved. "Who else has access?" he asked. Marcus didn't look back. "Senior maintenance," he replied. "System engineers." And, he hesitated. William finished it for him. "Executive clearance." Marcus nodded once. "Yeah, that settled it further. This wasn't just access. It was permission, carefully granted, carefully abused." They reached a reinforced door at the end of the hall. Marcus swiped his card. A soft beep, then another. The light flashed red. Marcus frowned. "That's not right." He tried again. Same result. "Access denied." William's expression hardened. "They've locked you out," he said. Marcus stepped closer, inspecting the panel. "They shouldn't be able to do that," he muttered. "Not without admin override." William's voice lowered. "They have it." A quiet realization settled between them. Not just someone inside the system, someone above it. Marcus exhaled slowly, thinking fast. "All right," he said. "Then we don't go through the front." He turned, already moving toward a secondary panel along the wall. "There's a manual access point," he explained. "Old system. Not connected to the main override network." William followed closely. "How long?" he asked. Marcus crouched, opening a narrow metal casing. "Couple minutes," he said. "If they haven't locked this too." Annie watched silently as her father worked, his movements quick but precise. Wires, switches, mechanical locks, things that belonged to a system built before automation took over. The kind of system that couldn't be controlled remotely. "Sometimes the old ways still matter," Marcus said quietly. William almost smiled at that. Not because it was comforting, but because it was true. A faint sound echoed down the hallway. Footsteps, this time closer. William's head turned instantly. "Someone's coming," he said. Marcus didn't stop. "Almost there," he replied. Annie stepped slightly closer to William. "Is it them?" she whispered. William didn't answer. He didn't know, but he was about to. The footsteps grew louder, deliberate, not rushed. A shadow appeared at the far end of the corridor, then a figure. A man in a suit. Not maintenance, not security. Someone who didn't belong here. Unless he knew exactly what he was doing. The man stopped when he saw them. For a brief moment, no one spoke. Then the man's eyes shifted to William. Recognition. No surprise. No confusion. Just acknowledgement. "I was wondering when you'd stop following the script," he said calmly. William stepped forward slightly, positioning himself just ahead of Annie. "We're done with your script," he replied. The man tilted his head slightly, almost amused. "That's unfortunate," he said. It was a very clean ending. Marcus stood slowly, still crouched near the panel, his hands not leaving the wiring. "You shouldn't be down here," Marcus said. The man glanced at him. "No," he replied. "But neither should you." A pause. Then, "Step away from the panel," the man added. Marcus didn't move. "I don't think I will," he said. The man's expression didn't change, but something in the air did. A shift. Subtle. Dangerous. "You don't understand what you're interfering with," the man said. Marcus let out a quiet breath. "I understand enough," he replied. "Someone changed my system." William's voice cut in. "You planned to kill me." No hesitation, no accusation, just fact. The man looked at him, and for the first time, he didn't deny it. "I planned to remove a variable," he said calmly. William's jaw tightened. "I'm not a variable," he said. The man gave a faint, almost dismissive smile. "Everyone is," he replied. "Some are just more inconvenient than others." Annie tightened her grip on her father's hand. William didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on the man. "Your plan failed," he said. The man shook his head slightly. "No," he corrected. "It changed." William's expression didn't shift. "And now?" he asked. The man's gaze flickered briefly toward Marcus, then back to William. "Now we adapt," he said. Behind William, Marcus's voice came quietly. "Got it." A soft mechanical click echoed from the panel. The system unlocked. The man heard it. His expression changed just slightly. For the first time, something close to concern. Marcus stood. "We're not playing your game anymore," he said. William stepped forward, his presence filling the space now not as a man walking into a trap, but as someone who had stepped outside of it. "It's over," William said. The man studied him, then glanced once more at the panel, at Marcus, at Annie. 3 variables he hadn't accounted for. 3 disruptions in a system that depended on precision. He exhaled slowly. "This isn't over," he said quietly. William's voice remained steady. "It is tonight." A long pause. Then the man stepped back, not retreating, not surrendering, just recalculating. And then he turned and walked away down the corridor, disappearing into the structure of the building. Silence followed, heavy, real. Marcus let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Annie leaned slightly into him. William remained still for a moment longer. Then he turned toward the control room door. "Finish it," he said. Marcus nodded, and together, they stepped into the place where the system could finally be taken back. William stepped into the control room first. The door closed behind them with a heavy, final sound sealing off the corridor. The footsteps. The man who had just walked away as if nothing had happened. Inside, the world changed again. Rows of panels stretched across the walls, each lined with indicators, switches, and digital displays that pulsed with quiet, constant life. Screens showed airflow diagrams, security feeds, access logs, every hidden layer of the building made visible in cold precision. This was the heart of it all, not the glass offices upstairs, not the conference room. Here, Marcus moved immediately, crossing the room with purpose. "I need a minute," he said, already pulling up system controls. "If they changed anything deeper than surface behavior, I'll have to trace it manually." William nodded. "Do it." Annie stayed near the door at first, her eyes moving across the room, taking in everything, even if she didn't fully understand it. But she didn't look overwhelmed. She looked focused, like someone who had already learned that noticing things mattered. William stepped closer to one of the monitors. A system map glowed on the screen, clean lines, structured pathways, everything flowing exactly as designed, at least on the surface. "Show me air control," William said. Marcus tapped quickly, pulling up another layer. The display shifted. Ventilation routes appeared, zones, pressure levels, circulation paths. "Normal. Too normal." Marcus leaned in. "Wait," he muttered. His fingers moved faster now, digging deeper. "There," he said. A small section of the system highlighted, barely noticeable unless you knew exactly where to look. A deviation. Tiny, but deliberate. William stepped closer. "What is it?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "They didn't override the whole system," he said. "Just one segment, connected to the executive conference room." William's eyes narrowed. "Is it active?" Marcus shook his head. "Not yet," he replied. "It's waiting for a trigger." William didn't need to ask what that trigger was. Presence, time, 5 minutes, or whatever they had adjusted it to. "Can you stop it?" William asked. Marcus hesitated. "Yes," he said, "but not cleanly." William looked at him. "What does that mean?" Marcus straightened slightly. "If I shut it down directly, whoever said it will know immediately," he said. "It'll send a signal back through the system." William considered that. "They'll know we're here," he said. Marcus nodded. "Yeah." Silence settled for a moment. Then Annie spoke. "What if you don't shut it down?" Both men looked at her. She stepped closer, pointing at the screen. "What if you change it?" she said. Marcus frowned slightly. "Change it? How?" Annie hesitated, searching for the right words. "Like, make it do something else," she said. "So they think it's still working, but it's not what they planned." William's gaze shifted back to the system, then to Marcus. Marcus's expression changed. Not immediately, but slowly. Recognition. "That's," he started. Then he nodded once. "That might work." William folded his arms slightly. "Explain." Marcus moved closer to the panel. "If I reroute the trigger," he said, The system will still activate, but not the way they expect. Annie watched him carefully. You mean it won't hurt anyone? She asked. Marcus looked at her. No, he said. Not if I do it right. William's voice was steady. And they won't know? Marcus gave a small, tight smile. Not until it's too late. William held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. Do it. Marcus went to work. The room filled with quiet urgency, the sound of keys, the soft hum of systems adjusting, the faint flicker of changing data across the screens. William stepped back slightly, giving him space, but his mind didn't rest. It moved. Fast. Precise. The man they had just encountered. He hadn't panicked. He hadn't argued. He had adapted, which meant, he's not done, William said quietly. Marcus didn't look up. I know. Annie looked between them. Then what happens next? She asked. William turned slightly, looking down at her. For him? He said. A pause. He'll try something else. Annie's fingers tightened slightly. And for us? William's expression didn't change. We make sure he doesn't get the chance. Marcus stopped typing for a moment. Then, it's ready, he said. William stepped forward again. Walk me through it. Marcus pointed to the screen. The trigger is still tied to the conference room, he explained. When they activate it, the system will respond. William nodded. But instead of sealing the room and cutting airflow, Marcus continued, it'll do the opposite. William's eyes narrowed slightly. Open it, he said. Marcus nodded. Full ventilation, he confirmed. Fresh air intake, doors unlock, system logs record everything. Annie blinked. So, it shows what they did? Marcus smiled faintly. Exactly. William exhaled slowly. For the first time that night, the system wasn't working against him. It was working for him. And the cameras? William asked. Marcus tapped another control. They come back online the second the trigger hits, he said. Everything gets recorded. William nodded once. Good. A brief silence followed. Then, a soft tone echoed through the room. A system alert. Marcus's head snapped toward the screen. They're initiating, he said. William's gaze sharpened. How long? Marcus checked the display. Less than a minute. Annie looked up at them. They're starting it now? William nodded. Yes. He looked back at the screen. This was it. The moment the plan was meant to succeed. The moment everything had been built toward. Only now, it wasn't their plan anymore. Marcus's hands hovered near the controls. Ready, he said. William didn't look away from the screen. Let it run. The seconds ticked down. Slow, heavy, every number carrying weight. Annie stood between them, her small hand still holding her father's. Not afraid. Not anymore. Just watching, waiting. Then, the system activated. Lights on the panel shifted. Data surged across the screens. Ventilation systems roared to life. And somewhere above them, in a room designed to become a trap, the truth finally broke through. William exhaled slowly. It's done, Marcus said. William shook his head slightly. No, he said quietly. His eyes remained fixed on the screen. This is just where it turns. Because for the first time that night, the people who had built the plan were about to see it fail. The system didn't fail. It answered. William watched the screen as data surged across it, clean, structured, undeniable. Lines of code that had once been hidden now unfolded in real time, exposing pathways that were never meant to be seen. Ventilation override complete, Marcus said, his voice steady but lower than before. Doors unlocked. Cameras back online. Above them, the building breathed differently, not sealed, not silent, alive. Annie stepped closer to the monitor, her eyes fixed on the shifting images. What's happening up there? She asked. Marcus switched the display. The screen split into multiple feeds. The executive conference room appeared. For the first time that night, they could see inside. William didn't blink. The room was exactly as it had always been. Long table, soft lighting, polished surfaces, but the people inside had changed. They weren't calm anymore. They were reacting. One of the men stood abruptly, his chair scraping sharply against the floor. Another turned toward the wall, staring at something just out of view, likely the panel that should have sealed them in. But it hadn't. Instead, the vents above them had opened. Fresh air poured in, the doors unlocked, and the cameras watching. They know, Annie whispered. William nodded. Yes, he said. Not just that the system had activated, but that it had betrayed them. Marcus leaned forward. adjusting the feed. "Audio's coming through," he said. A second later, voices filled the room. "What did you do?" One man snapped. "I didn't touch anything," another replied, his tone tight with confusion. This wasn't supposed to happen. William's expression didn't change, but his focus sharpened. Then, the man Annie had pointed out earlier stepped into view. The quiet one, the one who didn't raise his voice, the one who didn't need to. He looked up at the camera, not startled, not confused, just aware. For a brief moment, it felt like he was looking directly at William, even from another floor, even through a screen. Then he turned away. "Shut it down," he said calmly. Someone moved toward the panel. Marcus shook his head slightly. "They won't be able to," he said. "Not from up there." On the screen, the man at the panel hesitated. "It's not responding," he said. The quiet man didn't react immediately. Then, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone. William's jaw tightened. "He's calling someone," Annie said. William nodded. "Yes." Marcus glanced at the system logs. "They're trying to regain control," he said. "But it's locked out from this level." William watched as the man spoke into the phone, his voice low, controlled, but carrying a weight that didn't need volume. Even without hearing every word, William understood the meaning. "Adapt." Again, "He's not panicking," William said quietly. "No," Marcus replied. "He's thinking." Annie looked between them. "Is that bad?" William didn't look away from the screen. "It means this isn't over," he said. On the monitor, tension filled the room. The others were unsettled, glancing at each other, at the doors, at the vents. The environment they had trusted to remain controlled had shifted beyond their reach. But the quiet man, he stood still, watching, calculating. Then, he ended the call, and something in his posture changed, subtle, but clear. "He's going to leave," William said. Marcus frowned. "Why?" "Because the plan failed," William replied. "And now, he needs distance." As if on qui, the man moved. He walked toward the door. No urgency, no hesitation, just decision. He opened it, stepped out. The camera followed as he entered the hallway. William's eyes narrowed. "Switch to corridor feed," he said. Marcus complied. The view changed. The man walked steadily down the hall, the same hall where, minutes earlier, William had stood in front of that door. The same place where everything had almost ended. Annie's voice was barely above a whisper. "Is he going to get away?" William didn't answer right away. He watched the screen, every step, every movement. Then, "No," he said. Marcus looked at him. "What are you thinking?" William stepped closer to the control panel. "Lock the elevators," he said. Marcus blinked. "Just this floor?" "No," William replied. "All executive access points. Stairwells too." Marcus's hands moved immediately. "You're trapping him," he said. William's voice remained calm. "I'm containing him." Annie looked up at him. "But he did that to you," she said. William finally looked down at her. "Yes," he said. A pause. Then, "And now he knows what it feels like." Marcus finished the command. "Done," he said. On the screen, the man reached the elevator, pressed the button, waited. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. He turned, walked toward the stairwell, pushed the door. It didn't open. For the first time, he stopped moving, completely, a stillness that wasn't calm. It was realization. "He's locked in," Annie said. William nodded. "Yes." On the screen, the man slowly turned his head, looking down the hallway, thinking, calculating, searching for another path. But there wasn't one. Not anymore. William exhaled quietly. For someone who believed in control, he said, he never expected to lose it. Marcus leaned back slightly. "So what now?" William's eyes remained on the screen. "Now," he said, "he has to face what he built." Annie watched the monitor. The man stood alone in the hallway now. No exit. No system to hide behind. No plan left to adjust. Just consequences. And for the first time that night, the danger had stopped moving forward. It had turned back, right toward the one who created it. The hallway camera held steady. William didn't look away. On the screen, the man stood motionless for several seconds, his body still, but his mind clearly moving. Even from a distance, the shift was visible. Not panic. Not fear. Recalculation. "He's not finished," William said quietly. Marcus leaned forward, studying the feed. "He's out of options," he replied. No elevators, no stairwell access. Systems locked tight. William shook his head slightly. Men like him don't rely on one option, he said. They build layers. Annie watched the screen, her small face tense but focused. What does that mean? She asked. It means, William said, he planned for something going wrong, as if the building itself responded to that thought. The man moved, not toward the elevators, not toward the stairwell. He turned down a side corridor. Marcus frowned. That's not a public access route, he said. William's eyes narrowed. No, he replied. It's not. Switch camera, William ordered. Marcus tapped quickly. The feed changed. Now the man appeared on another screen walking down a narrower hallway, one rarely used except by maintenance and internal staff. The same network William and Annie had used earlier. He knows the building, Annie said softly. William nodded. Yes, he said. Better than he should. The man stopped in front of a panel. Not a door, not an exit. A control point. Marcus's expression changed instantly. That's a local override, he said. Limited access, but enough to open certain routes. William stepped closer. Can he bypass the lockdown? He asked. Marcus hesitated. Not fully, he said. But he might be able to open a path. Annie tightened her grip on the edge of the console. So he can still get out? William's voice remained calm. Only if we let him. On the screen, the man crouched slightly, opening the panel with practiced ease. No hesitation, no searching. He knew exactly where to touch, exactly what to access. Marcus moved quickly. I'm blocking that node, he said. His fingers flew across the controls. The system responded, but not fast enough. On the monitor, a small section of the building layout blinked. Unlocked. A narrow route. He found a gap, Marcus said. William's jaw tightened. Where does it lead? Marcus checked the system map. Service elevator, he said. Restricted access. Not connected to the main lock. William exhaled slowly. There it was, the layer beneath the layer. He planned an exit, William said. Marcus nodded. Yeah. Annie looked between them. What do we do? William didn't hesitate. Close it, he said. Marcus tried. I'm on it, he replied. But the system resisted. Something's blocking remote override, Marcus said. He's locking it from his side. William watched the screen. The man stood again. Calm, efficient. He had what he needed. And he was moving. Switch to elevator feed, William said. Marcus complied. The camera changed. The man stepped into the service elevator. The doors slid open, then closed behind him. For a brief moment, silence. Then the system updated. He's going down, Marcus said. William's gaze hardened. To where? Marcus checked. Parking level, he said. Annie's voice was small. He's going to leave. William didn't answer immediately. He stared at the screen, at the empty hallway where the man had just been, at the system that had almost taken his life, now being used to escape. No, William said quietly. Annie looked up. But he's not leaving, William said. Marcus turned toward him. What are you thinking? William's mind moved quickly now, faster than before, sharper than at any point that night. He's still inside the system, he said. Which means he's still visible. Marcus understood immediately. You want to track him? William nodded. Every step. Marcus began typing again, pulling up a different interface. Service elevator feed is limited, he said. But I can pull movement logs. Predict exit point. Annie watched the screen. Numbers, lines, data, things she didn't fully understand, but she could feel the tension. He's not going to stop, is he? She asked. William looked down at her. No, he said. A pause. Not unless we stop him. Marcus spoke again. I've got it, he said. He'll reach the lower parking level in 30 seconds. William straightened. Security. Marcus shook his head. Locked out of the system earlier, he said. We'd have to call them manually. William didn't hesitate. Do it. Marcus grabbed a nearby phone, dialing quickly. Annie looked at William. Will they get there in time? William's gaze returned to the screen. Maybe, he said. Then, but we don't wait for maybe. Marcus spoke into the phone, his voice urgent now. Lower parking level, he said. Service access. Now. He hung up. William turned toward the door. Annie noticed immediately. Where are you going? She asked. William looked at her. To meet him, he said. Marcus frowned. That's not safe. he said. William's expression didn't change. Neither was walking into that room, he replied. A beat of silence. Then, I'm not letting him disappear, William added. Annie stepped forward slightly. I'm coming with you, she said. William shook his head. No. Her eyes didn't waver. You said stay with you, she replied. William held her gaze. For a moment, he almost said no again. But then, he remembered. She was the reason he was still standing here. The reason any of this had changed. He exhaled slowly. Stay behind me, he said. Annie nodded. Marcus stepped forward. I'm coming too, he said. William gave a short nod. Let's move. They left the control room together. The door closed behind them, and the building felt different again. Not quiet, not controlled, but in motion, somewhere below. A man who had planned everything was trying to escape the consequences of his own design. And for the first time that night, William Carter wasn't avoiding the danger. He was walking straight toward it. The stairwell door slammed open as William pushed through. This time, there was no hesitation in his movement, no pause to calculate, no instinct to hold back. Below them, the building stretched into darker levels, raw concrete, low ceilings, the distant echo of engines and ventilation systems blending into a steady mechanical hum. Parking level is 2 flights down, Marcus said, already moving. Annie stayed close, her small steps quick but controlled, one hand brushing lightly against the railing as they descended. William moved faster, not recklessly but with purpose sharpened by clarity. For the first time that night, the direction was no longer uncertain. He knew exactly where this was going, and he knew exactly who was waiting at the end of it. They reached the final landing. The door to the parking level stood just ahead, closed. Still, William slowed just slightly, raising a hand without turning. Wait, he said. Marcus and Annie stopped immediately. William listened. Through the door, faint sounds, a distant engine, the low hum of fluorescent lights, and something else. Footsteps, moving, not running, not rushed. William's jaw tightened. He's here, he said quietly. Marcus stepped closer. Security? He asked. William shook his head. Not yet, which meant they were still ahead of it. William pushed the door open. The parking level spread out before them wide, dimly lit, lined with concrete pillars and rows of parked vehicles casting long shadows under flickering overhead lights. The air smelled of oil and metal, cold, empty, but not quiet. Footsteps echoed faintly somewhere between the rows. William stepped forward, slow now, measured, every movement deliberate. Annie stayed behind him, just as he had told her. Marcus followed close. They moved deeper into the space, between pillars, past silent cars. The sound grew clearer, closer. Then, a figure stepped into view. The man, standing beside a dark sedan, keys in his hand, composed, as if this moment had always been part of the plan. He looked up, saw William, and didn't seem surprised. I was wondering how long it would take, he said calmly. William stopped several feet away. The distance between them wasn't large, but it felt deliberate, controlled. You didn't think I'd let you walk out, William replied. The man tilted his head slightly. I didn't think you'd come down here yourself, he said. A faint pause. Risky. William's expression didn't shift. You miscalculated, he said. The man almost smiled. No, he replied. I adjusted. Behind William, Marcus tensed slightly. Annie remained still, watching, listening. You lost control of the system, William said. The man glanced briefly at the ceiling. Systems are temporary, he said. People are not. William's voice was steady. You planned to kill me. The words hung in the air, clear, undeniable. The man didn't deny it. You were becoming a liability, he said simply. Marcus took a step forward. That's not business, he said. That's murder. The man looked at him. No, he said calmly. That's efficiency. Annie's hand tightened slightly behind William. William didn't move. You built this with me, he said. The man met his gaze. Yes, he said. A pause, and I knew exactly how to end it. Silence stretched between them. Then, you won't get away with it, William said. The man lifted the keys slightly. I already have, he replied. And then, he moved, fast, not toward William, toward the car. William reacted instantly. Stop. Ode. The man reached the door, but before he could open it, a sharp sound cut through the air. Don't move. Voices. From behind. Security. 3 guards emerged from the far end of the parking level, moving quickly, weapons drawn but controlled. The man froze, not in panic. In calculation, his eyes flicked toward the guards, then back to William. For a brief moment, everything balanced on a decision. Run or stop. He exhaled slowly. Then, he let the keys fall. They hit the concrete with a sharp, final sound. The guards moved in, closing the distance, securing him quickly, efficiently, hands restrained. Control regained. William didn't move. He watched, not with anger, not with relief, with something quieter, something heavier. The man didn't resist. Even as he was held, even as the plan collapsed around him, his expression remained composed. He looked at William one last time. "This doesn't change anything," he said. William stepped closer. Now the distance between them was gone. "It changes everything," he replied. A pause. Then, "You lost," William added. The man shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "You just survived." William held his gaze. For a moment, the truth of that lingered. Then, "Take him," one of the guards said. They began to move him away. His footsteps echoed across the concrete, fading, until he disappeared from sight. Silence followed. Real silence. Not the controlled kind from before. Not the dangerous kind. Just stillness. Marcus exhaled deeply. "It's over," he said. William didn't answer right away. He looked around the parking level, at the shadows, at the space where everything had almost ended, and where it had been stopped. Then he looked down. Annie stood quietly beside him. Small, still, but steady. She looked up at him. "Is it done?" she asked. William held her gaze. For a moment, he thought about everything that had happened. The system, the plan, the betrayal, and the one voice that had cut through all of it. "Yes," he said finally, "it's done." But as they stood there, William understood something that would stay with him long after that night ended. He hadn't saved himself. He had been warned. And this time, he had listened. The parking level didn't return to normal right away. Even after the guards disappeared with the man, even after the echo of their footsteps faded into the structure of the building, something lingered in the air, like the space itself needed time to understand what had just happened. William remained where he was. Still, quiet. The overhead lights flickered faintly above, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Somewhere in the distance, a car engine turned over, then faded as it drove away. Unaware of how close everything had come to ending differently, Marcus shifted beside him, running a hand slowly across the back of his neck. "That could have gone a lot worse," he said. William nodded, but his expression didn't soften. "It almost did," he replied. Annie stood close, her small hand resting lightly against her father's arm now. The urgency that had carried her through the night had settled, replaced by something quieter, fatigue, maybe, or the slow return of being a child again after having to act like something more. William looked down at her. "You did exactly the right thing," he said. Annie didn't smile. She just nodded once. "I just didn't want you to go in there," she said. The simplicity of it stayed with him. No strategy, no calculation, just instinct. Marcus crouched slightly, pulling Annie closer. "You scared me," he said softly. Annie leaned into him. "I know," she replied. William turned away slightly, giving them a moment not out of distance, but respect. This was something he understood, even if he rarely stood inside it. Family, protection, the kind of responsibility that didn't come from power, but from care. Footsteps returned. This time, slower, measured. A group of security officers approached, led by a man William recognized, head of building security. Older, composed, carrying the weight of responsibility in the way he moved. "Mr. Carter," he said, stopping a few feet away. "We have him secured. Law enforcement is on the way." William nodded once. "Good," he said. The man glanced briefly at Marcus, then at Annie, his expression shifting just slightly. "We'll need statements," he added. "From all of you." Marcus straightened. "Of course," he said. William's voice remained calm. "You'll have everything you need," he said. "System logs, camera feeds, all of it." The security chief nodded. "We've already started pulling data," he replied. A pause. Then, "Sir, what exactly happened up there?" William didn't answer immediately, because the truth wasn't simple. It wasn't just a system failure, or a security breach. It was something deeper, more personal. Someone used what we built, William said finally, and turned it into something it was never meant to be. The security chief held his gaze, then nodded. We'll take it from here, he said. William didn't argue. For the first time that night, he didn't need to control what happened next. The officers moved away, returning to their work, their voices low but focused as they coordinated the next steps. Marcus exhaled again, slower this time. Police, reports, investigations, he said. This is going to be a long night. William looked at him. Yes, he said. But it's not the end of it. Marcus frowned slightly. What do you mean? William glanced back toward the stairwell, then up toward the floors above, invisible from where they stood, but no less present. He didn't act alone, William said. Marcus's expression tightened. You think there are more? William nodded once. I know there are, he said. Annie looked between them. Does that mean it's not over? She asked. William looked down at her. For a moment, he considered the question carefully. Then he answered honestly. The danger we stopped tonight? He said. That part is over. Annie listened. But what comes after it? He continued. That's something we deal with next. She nodded slowly, understanding more than a child her age should have to. Marcus placed a hand gently on her shoulder. We'll be okay, he said quietly. William watched that moment, and something in him shifted. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but enough to recognize something he had overlooked for years. Strength didn't always look like control. Sometimes, it looked like standing beside someone who needed you. William stepped closer. Marcus, he said. Marcus looked up. Yes, sir. William shook his head slightly. William, he corrected. Marcus blinked, then gave a small nod. William. A pause. Then, I owe you, William said. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but Annie spoke first. You don't, she said. Both men looked at her. Annie's voice was quiet, but certain. You just have to listen next time, she added. William held her gaze. For a long moment, he didn't speak, because there was nothing to correct, nothing to explain, just something to accept. I will, he said, and this time, it wasn't a promise made out of obligation. It was something deeper, something earned. In the distance, the sound of approaching sirens filtered faintly into the parking structure. The world outside was catching up. Authorities, questions, consequences. But for now, right here, there was only stillness, not the dangerous silence from before, not the controlled quiet of power. Something else, something real. William took a slow breath, and for the first time that night, it felt like he could. The sirens reached them before the flashing lights did. A low, distant wail, at first barely noticeable beneath the hum of the building, then gradually rising, growing clearer, closer, until it filled the parking level with a sound that carried weight beyond urgency. Not panic, not chaos. Authority. The world outside had arrived. William stood still as the sound settled into the space around them, echoing off concrete and steel. For most of his life, moments like this had belonged to other people, incidents, disruptions, problems handled at a distance. Tonight, it had been his life, and he had stood inside it. Marcus shifted beside him, his hand still resting lightly on Annie's shoulder. They're here, he said quietly. William nodded. Yes, but he didn't move. Not yet, because something in him understood. Before everything became statements, reports, legal language, and controlled narratives, there was this moment, the last moment where everything was still human. Annie looked up at him. Is it going to be loud? She asked. William glanced down, then gave a small, almost gentle shake of his head. Only for a little while, he said. She nodded. That was enough for her. Footsteps approached again, faster this time, more numerous. Police officers entered the parking level, their presence immediate but contained, scanning the area, coordinating with security. One of them approached William. Mr. Carter, the officer asked. William turned. Yes, we're going to need to take you upstairs, the officer said. There are a few things we need to go over. William held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. Of course, the officer glanced briefly at Marcus and Annie. They'll need to come as well, he added. Marcus gave a short nod. We understand. They began moving together, not rushed, not forced, but guided. The parking level slowly faded behind them as they returned toward the stairwell. As they climbed, the building felt different again. Not threatening, not silent. Exposed, lights brighter, movement more visible, voices echoing where there had been emptiness before. By the time they reached the executive floor, it was no longer quiet. Officers moved through the halls. Security teams coordinated at intersections. The conference room door stood open now, no longer a sealed space, but one being examined, documented, understood. William paused briefly as they passed it. He didn't step inside. He didn't need to. He had already seen what it was, what it had been meant to be, and what it had almost done. "Sir?" the officer prompted gently. William nodded and continued walking. They were led into a smaller room, functional, quiet, away from the movement outside. A place for questions, for clarity, for the slow process of turning a night like this into something the world could understand. But before he stepped fully inside, William turned. Marcus and Annie stood just behind him. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then William crouched slightly again, bringing himself level with Annie, the same way he had before, but not for the same reason. "You're going to be asked some questions," he said. "Just tell them what you told me." Annie nodded. "I will." William held her gaze. "You were very brave tonight." Annie shook her head gently. "I was just scared," she said. William paused. "Then, that's what bravery is," he replied. She didn't fully understand that. Not yet, but she accepted it. Marcus watched the exchange quietly, something in his expression softer now, less guarded, more open. "You didn't have to listen to her," Marcus said. William stood. "Yes," he said. "I did." A pause. "I just didn't know it yet." Marcus let out a quiet breath. "Most people wouldn't have," he said. William looked at him. "Most people didn't hear her," he replied. Silence followed. Then the officer gestured again. "We're ready, sir." William nodded. "Give us a minute." The officer stepped back. William looked at both of them one more time. "There's going to be a lot that comes after this," he said. "Investigations. Changes. People asking questions." Marcus nodded. "We'll handle it." William's gaze shifted to Annie. "But one thing doesn't change," he said. Annie tilted her head slightly. "What?" "What?" William didn't hesitate. "You mattered tonight," he said. The words were simple, but they carried something deeper than anything else he had said. Annie held his gaze, then nodded once, as if she understood just enough. William straightened. Then, without ceremony, without distance, he extended his hand to Marcus. Not as a boss, not as a man above him, but as an equal. Marcus looked at it for a moment, then took it. "Firm. Real. Thank you," William said. Marcus gave a small nod. "You listened," he replied. William released his hand, then turned, and stepped into the room. The door closed behind him. Outside, the building continued to move, officers working, voices rising and falling, the system returning to something that resembled order. Marcus knelt beside Annie. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah." A pause. Then, "Dad?" "Yeah." Annie looked toward the closed door where William had just gone. "He's different now," she said. Marcus followed her gaze, then looked back at her. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think he is." Annie leaned lightly against him. The noise of the building didn't feel as loud anymore. Not overwhelming, just distant. "Are we going home soon?" she asked. Marcus smiled faintly. "Yeah," he said. "Soon." And as they sat there waiting, together the night slowly began to release its hold. Not all at once, not completely, but enough. Enough for breath to come easier. Enough for the world to feel steady again. Inside the room, William stood alone for a moment before the questions began. He looked at the table, at the chair, at the space where decisions would now be explained instead of made. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't think about control. He thought about a small voice in a quiet hallway, a moment he almost ignored, a truth that didn't come from power, only from being seen. William sat down, and as the door closed fully behind him, one understanding settled clearly, finally, into place. Sometimes the most important warning doesn't come from the people you trust. It comes from the one person you almost didn't hear. And if you listen, it can change everything. This story reminds us that danger does not always arrive loudly. It often hides behind trust, routine, and systems we believe are safe. True awareness comes not from power, but from the willingness to listen, especially to those we tend to overlook. A child, with no authority and no agenda, saw what others missed because she trusted her instincts and chose to speak. And a man who had built his life on control survived only because he finally chose to listen. The lesson is simple, yet profound. Respect every voice, no matter how small. Because sometimes the truth that saves your life comes from the person you least expect. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.